so many bad books to read.
Welcome in, everyone. I'm Nurse Huckleberry, and for those of you who are new, this is the Bad Reads Book Club, where I read bad books so you don't have to. We've got, oh, it's very green screened out, The Machine's Child. I will put a picture of this not on the green screen. So this book is actually the 7th book in the Company novel series. No, I did not read the previous 6. Follows the journey of Alec, Edward, and Nicholas, 3 cyborg consciousnesses, as they travel through time in the hopes of rescuing their love Mendoza and defeating the evil Dr. Zeus.
I'm lost already.
This book's really confusing. Okay, there's 3 consciousnesses sharing one body. Alec was born in the 2300s, Edward is from the 1800s, and Nicholas is from the 1500s. Technically, they were all made in like the 2300s by Dr. Zeus, and then some of them were sent back in time, and they're all cyborgs and with different programmings. Alec is the only real one with a body. The other ones were actually killed back in the day and are essentially a memory that's being stored and used in the future. And technically they were all like the same clone of a person. I don't actually know if they were the same person, but there were 3 cyborgs. So they're in cyberspace, but also in reality. One of them can control the host body at a time, and technically it's Alex's body. So one of them can control the body at a time, but all 3 of them are there, and they can see each other regardless of whether or not they're occupying the present human body. Okay, Dr. Seuss and the company.
Wait, Dr. Seuss?
Dr. Zeus.
Okay.
Zeus, like god of thunder and lightning, have like a reign of terror over the human race as a whole. Basically, Dr. Zeus figured out time travel, I think. Time travel's involved. Dr. Zeus went back in time and he went to all these different time periods and started building a fortune and basically just accrued so much interest over time that in like the present, which is 2300 something, he's like a super tycoon, right? Yeah, that makes lots of sense. So, but there's also like immortals that the company has created. And so Dr. Zeus has created all these people that are different to fulfill various tasks for him. And so he has these immortals that are non-human, that were like made in a lab, but then grown in a uterus. And then one of them, Mendoza, who is a woman, is a lover of Alec, Nicholas, and Edward in their respective times. She's immortal. She's been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. So she has had like love with all these different men, and now they all occupy one consciousness. So they have a united goal to save her. Now, some of the immortals have been shipped off to this immortal prison back in 300,000 BCE, where a different immortal, Marco, who's like pretty crazy and working for the company, has made it his like life's goal to research how to kill the immortals. And basically he spends his days conducting horrific and just gruesome experiments on these people who cannot die, and they're basically just like ripped to smithereens, and he pours chemicals on them and tries to kill them, burning them in fires, and it's this whole thing. And he can't ever figure out how to actually kill them. And he's also an immortal, so he basically just rips them into chunks and tortures them forever, for hundreds of years, screaming and slowly regenerating and never dying. Alec, who I don't know when he acquired the consciousnesses of Edward and Nicholas, but he does. So he had created, Alec is obsessed with pirates I don't know why he's obsessed with pirates. And so he has this 24th century yacht that he bought and just decorated it to look like a pirate ship. And he's got this AI that they call him Captain Morgan, who speaks. His name's Captain Morgan.
They call him Captain Morgan?
They call him Captain Morgan.
Oh, okay.
And it's an AI that speaks just in pirate. But Botany Cabin went straight to L while you was sick. Yeah. That's the AI. So the AI speaks as a fucking pirate, but then also is super smart and is the one that does all the calculations for traveling through time. And like, it's wild. Anyways, so also the actual like image of if the AI wants to be like, hello, I'm a hologram, but I am here. It's a fucking pirate with like a big beard and like a hat. And he's like, yo, ha, ha, I'm Captain Morgan. The whole thing, like, it makes no sense. And then the whole ship is decorated with like gold and like doubloons, and they have like pirate swords.
Shiver me timbers. Back to the book.
So there's his own time continuum situation happening here. So basically, Dr. Seuss has the master timeline where he knows everything that has happened up until the year 2355, and then something happens at 2355, but nobody knows what it is. So Dr. Seuss has made all of the immortals, and they all have their different jobs, and they're all supposed to do different stuff, and they're not human. Like, they look human, but they have like superpowers. Basically, they've got like super smell and hearing and speed and strength, and they're really smart, but they're not human. And they have like programs built into their brains that they're supposed to follow. So they follow the word of the company. So Alec, Edward, and Nicholas have all fell in love with Mendoza at some point in their life, and Mendoza is one of these immortals, and she's a botanist. So they find her locked in that prison back in 300,000 BC. The Captain Morgan, the AI, he had been searching for her. So mind you, the three guys are all sharing this one body, and they're not getting along. They're having a bad time. They're like fighting each other, being shitty, and then the captain's like, come on, gentlemen, get it together. We all want the same goal. We want to save Mendoza. And so they're like, yes, save Mendoza. They go, and eventually the captain's like, I found her. She's in this hut in 300,000 BC, being kept in this weird prison. So they figure out a way, not kill, maybe disarm the guard, Marco, the one that's doing the crazy experiments, because they are not immortal. They are mortal. They could be killed. Now, each of the consciousnesses did a different thing while they were alive, and one of them, Edward, was like a special ops kind of guy, even though it was in the 1800s. So they're like, hey, Edward, you've got all the special ops training. You take control, because you're going to be the best one. They have this special poison blow dart that like is supposed to work against the immortal. It's not going to kill him, but it's going to slow him down a bunch. And so they shoot the immortal with the blow dart, and then they find Mendoza's body in this coffin, and they find her special records or whatever, and they take those and they make their way back to the pirate time ship. The captain then puts Mendoza into a tube, a regeneration chamber, and slowly rebuilds her body. And mind you, it was kind of like a gross shred of what a human once was kind of situation. Like, basically they could be almost entirely destroyed, but they never die. So it was like not even a body. It was like you know, could have been just like a leg. That was all they had. Anyways, doesn't really say what it looked like. So he regrows the whole thing from whatever scraps were left in this container, and it takes a while. And also the trio was hurt during it, so he's like repairing the trio, blah blah blah. Eventually he's like, she's ready. So they go, and turns out, yeah, he might have regrown her body all the way, but he was only able to regrow to where she was set at her beginning of immortality, because apparently they're made immortal later in life and not at the beginning of life. I don't know, it's a process. So he finds out that she wasn't immortal the whole time. She was turned immortal at age 14, so she's in a 14-year-old's body, and they're like, yeah, that's hot. That's real hot. Mind you, the male characters are all in their 30s, and then you have the female love interest who is in a 14-year-old's body, and the AI is like, oh yeah, also, by the way, her brain doesn't really work yet. It's gonna take some time for the brain to start like making all the connections again, like stuff's not really working. So she's kind of babbling like an idiot. And they're like, oh, that sounds cool. Do you want to have sex? And she's like, Tree? Tree's my name again? And they're like, we would like to have sex with you. And she's like, I don't know what that is. They're like, great, love it. Let's do it anyways. And so there's a lot of like aggressive groping and kissing. And mind you, she's hundreds of years old, but she has, it's real gross. Hundreds of years old, consciousness in a 14-year-old body, but then like mental capacity of like a 2-year-old. And it really made me feel gross. Didn't like that. And the AI is like, yeah, it's gonna be a few years until she like fills out and looks like herself. Like she's gonna have to grow over the course of the next, 5 years or whatever. And they're like, that feels like a long time. Why don't we just bone now? Who wants to wait for that? And so while there aren't like graphic depictions of what happens, they talk about it, and I'm like, it just doesn't feel good. So eventually Mendoza gets her consciousness back, but they've like locked away some memories for her own good kind of situation, because like obviously she doesn't really need to remember the 900 years where she was like locked in the prison being experimented on, like stuck in a steel box. They're like, maybe she doesn't need to remember some of those things. So they've like kind of put those memories behind a paywall situation. I don't know. But they decide that they're gonna get back at Dr. Seuss, right? She's in full mental capacity, kind of, except they've lied to her a whole bunch. Like they lied to her a lot. Also, she doesn't know that it's a trio of people. She thinks it's one person, but she's also kind of like, why the fuck are they so weird? Because like, I know this person, but they talk really funny. Because each of the individual consciousnesses has their own dialect that they speak in. They all speak in English, but one of them is like a modern English, one of them speaks in 1800s English, and one of them speaks in ye old Tudor English. Also, they are British accents. So she's like, why are they suddenly jumping between people? Because one person's in charge at a time, and they don't like bother to try and make themselves sound like each other. No, they just talk in their own personality. And she's like, this is a little weird. And they're like, yeah, whatever. You won't figure out that there's 3 of us in here. So they just lie to her the whole time. Which
Wait, they
also
don't even tell her that there's 3 of them?
No, which I don't understand. I don't get why they would. And they also tell her that they're immortal instead of just like admitting the truth that they're not immortal and that they're trying to become immortal. It's like a whole thing. So they're like going back in time. They're deciding that they're going to get revenge on Dr. Seuss by using the same essentially methods that he used to gain power, because he had gone back in time and set up all these trust funds and like basically use the benefit of knowing history to his advantage of like making himself incredibly wealthy in the present. So they went back in time and they set up all of these like bank accounts and stuff over hundreds of years and like set up certain things to like, oh, like accrue interest until this year, blah, blah, blah. So that way they would become super rich later and have a lot of money and power, right? But at the same time, Captain Morgan, the AI of the pirate ship, figures out that he could maybe use nanobots, where they program the nanobots to lie dormant in whatever just like puddle of nanobots until the year 2355, when they're going to wage war on Dr. Seuss. And so they lie dormant until that year, and then they're going to take shape of whatever weapon and then attack Dr. Zeus. So they go back in time, and there's a very long time spent on describing them going back to all these different times in history, going along and sticking little vials of gold dust into walls and into holes in the ground and into a knot of a tree. Like, the whole thing feels like a very self-masturbatory exercise from the author about how much he knows about history. And like, I can write historical stuff of every time period. I can write in French and I can write in Latin. Not only is there infighting amongst the consciousnesses that the love interest does not know about, the AI also talks directly into their heads and can talk out loud. So sometimes it's very confusing about who is talking to each other and whether they're saying this in private or if they're saying it out loud, and who knows what's going on. Also, the consciousnesses, while one of them occupies the body, the other two are like projected to the side as like holograms of some sort, and they're able to see each other, but like other people aren't able to see them. So it's like, I don't know, it's very confusing because it describes them as being in their like preferred clothing, but they're a hologram, so it really doesn't make sense as to why they need clothing. But they're like, no, I would like appropriate Victorian era explorer outfit because we're going to Egypt. Also, all of the cities, it's either Pacific Northwest, Catalina Island, or in England, and then there was a little stint in Egypt, and then of course they went to Jamaica because pirates. Like, it just doesn't make any sense, and they're constantly moving around in time. Also, I haven't even mentioned there's 3 other subplots happening in different timelines with completely different characters. The ending, so the main goal was to find the base DNA of Alec, of the host body, because they want to make him immortal, and they can't make him immortal with his current DNA because he's too old. And so they need the base DNA from when he was a baby, and Dr. Zeus and the company have hidden it far away, locked in the year 500,000 BCE. And so they have to go to that time, and it took them a long time to figure out where it was. And they have to go to that time and find the DNA so that way the AI Captain Morgan pirate guy can turn him immortal. And so they've been trying to find the DNA in all these different locations where they think it might be stored, and they're kind of getting clues, and they go all these different times and places, and they're doing these secret missions essentially. And then finally they go to the year 500,000 BCE, where there's some poor random human dude who's been tricked by the company and is just standing around. He's wearing these like, he's living in a simulation, and his job is to just make sure stuff goes okay. But he's living in a simulation. He can't see any of them. And the whole time he's at like a baby shower for his fake coworkers that are also a part of the simulation. It's so weird. And he's standing there eating blueberry muffins and stuff with this like simulation going on. And they sneak past him, and they get the freaking the DNA, and they sneak back along, and the AI has been intercepting the whole time, confusing the dude, blah blah blah. And then they leave, and then for whatever reason, one of the consciousnesses, Edward, who was the special ops guy, it turns out he's a real dick. He actually wants the DNA so that way they can put a baby in the love interest, and that eventually he can transfer his consciousness to the baby clone of himself so that he can live on again, because he doesn't want to share consciousness with other people, and he wants his own body back. So he kicks the other 2 consciousnesses out of his body, and he's like, screw you, I figured out a way. He like locks them in cyberspace essentially, and then he's like, I'm gonna win, I'm gonna make my own body, fuck you guys, I get the lady all to myself. And he's like running, right? And then they're trying to get back to the ship. It's in 500,000 BCE on some unknown island. And he runs into the water and gets attacked by an ichthyosaur? Like a giant crocodile fish thing? Bruh. He gets attacked by an ichthyosaur, gets his fucking leg ripped off. And the love interest is like, oh no! And she, the whole time, has this weird fucking radiation thing going on, which is basically the human equivalent of telekinesis, where she creates weird force fields of time around her, and they can't figure out why. But because she's a botanist, she just makes plants grow constantly. So she's freaking out and has all these plants growing around her. And yeah, he's got his leg ripped off. And then the AI sends out some servo units to go pick him up and like tourniquets his leg, and then it's like back to the ship. And that's the end of the book. This book was so confusing. Like, and I don't think it even has to deal with it being the 7th book in a series. The main thing that was confusing was like trying to figure out what fucking time and place you were in, because as I said, there's like 4 subplots going on. There's like the main plot and then 3 subplots. And they all happen at different times, and they're all jumping around to different things. And it's very hard to figure out who has what relationship to each other in the beginning. And I didn't really figure that out until probably halfway through, and I was like, who the fuck are these people? The author has like an obsession with like Shakespeare, and so they keep talking about Shakespeare the whole time.
Would you recommend this book?
No, I wouldn't. I really wouldn't. I'd say 2 out of 5.
2 out of 5. That's the worst rating so
2
far.
out of 5. Not a good book. Did not enjoy it. Felt it was very confusing, very convoluted, and fucking boring. Because there's 3 characters in one body. Scenes take forever because they fight amongst each other, all in the head. So they're fighting amongst each other, but then also it describes how each character is like experiencing something. So some scenes take way longer than they ever would need to, because you have to describe it from 3 people's perspectives from 3 different points in time. Thanks so much for hanging out. This has been Bad Reads Book Club. Well, you can do whatever you want, Duder. Thanks so much for joining me, folks. This has been Bad Reads Book Club. So lovely to have you here. We'll see you next time.
No, good thing I can edit that in post.